So does anybody have a question or a comment? Go ahead, Anna. Introduce yourself just so we get to know each other over the 2 days.
Hello. I have a question to Patrice. As an artist, I really would like to ask you if you could describe more or comment more on your sort of collaboration with Javiera, meaning how she as an artist influenced your experiment with wave. Like you said, you talked a lot, but if you could share with us a little bit more details of that process, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll take a second question before you answer. Deuxième question, second question or comment. Hervé.
I'm Hervé Naran, I'm an artist as well. So I was asking if you, in your laboratory, you study as well schematics.
Schematics?
Yeah.
Okay, third question. Do we have a third question or comment? Okay, Harold is going to help us get a critical mass here, a breaking wave of questions.
It's not a question, it's a comment. I appreciated particularly very much the moment where you described the point where you came to the right picture at the end of your common exposure. I think this is very deep of teaching for the whole art and science process. I mean, it's narrow enough, it's small enough, so that it is exactly scientifically on the process, and it is exactly artistically on the process. But, you know, the processes are very, very different, but on a very particular point, you touch each other, and I call that les tangentes. I don't know the name in English. With it, tangents. You know, the mathematical. You know, the speed. The two speeds are the same, synchronized, and to me this is very fundamental.
Okay, so Patrice, you want to just begin? I guess
So as you know now, as we met. Yes, we met quite a long time ago now, and we have several projects in common. The first one, she was still a student with Jacques, and after we have this project on the bioluminescent plankton that we put in the tubes, and so that was the third time that we wanted to work together. And we talk about that, about waves, and when we met from time to time. And the first thing we wanted to settle down is a financial support for Javiera. So I need to say that this is important, and because she was away for different jobs and making movies, or you were in Luxembourg, and there we didn't work together. So that's the first point. So hopefully we had this opportunity with IMéRA to get this financial support for some months. And so that's the first thing that was good. Second point that I think is quite important is, and I was still the vice director of my laboratory at the time, but I'm sure that the new director and the new direction will act the same way, was to give an office to Javiera in my lab. So she has an office with her name on the door, you know. Exactly. Yes, that's funny, but I think it's quite the respect that we need to give to artists coming in the lab, you know. And this is very good. She was not a simple photographer coming in the lab and trying to make good pictures of phenomena that she can see. She was an actor of our laboratory, and this collaboration will be part of the outcome, say, of the laboratory. Okay, it will be in the, you know, every 4 years we have to produce the synthesis of what we did for 4 years, and for the lab to be renewed, and this work will be part of it. So this is kind of practical reason, but with psychological consequences quite important. And also because she has an office there, she can come when she wants to come. She can meet people not only me. She can talk with my collaborators, my students. She go to the same cafeteria, and she is part of a live laboratory. And that's also important for the laboratory, of course, because you can have new ideas coming from these kind of discussions. What else? The project started 3 months. The true project started 3 months ago, and there we really set up from nothing. That is where to put the setup. So we had to, rooms, and this is a big dispute in a lab. Where you are, which rooms you can use, how many offices you have in your group, and so on. And so there we managed to have a space somewhere, and we started to buy glass plates and to glue them together and to set up a computer and to have a motor from another experiment and to do some computing things and to go to the workshop to cut the things, the parabolic shape of a wave maker. We did that together. So she was really there, and we were really involved together in the project. And after you work and that was just recently that we end up with this, what I think beautiful movies, but more than beautiful, also useful for research. And I hope that we will continue and that we can publish something on that, yes.
I think just push the question a little bit. Yeah. So if you think back over this, has your collaboration with Javiera changed the direction that your own research has taken? Right, so clearly you were working side by side, talking, discussing.
I would say the opposite thing. We started really with this idea that waves and the ocean and the water waves are waves as sound and light, and this is a way we communicate. You can hear me because of the sound waves, you can see me because of the light, but we do not see these waves. So the starting idea was, why don't we use these surface waves to communicate? And the first idea was, you put a microphone, you vibrate something with a microphone, you see the waves on the water table, and you put on a probe, and you can restitute the sound. This is maybe still a good project we can do one day. But you see, that's the opposite. I was really in this cup thing, these singularities things, and I think this is maybe, I attracted you more on my side than maybe you on your side. But I don't know, the project is still going. This is a living thing, a project, Sometimes you do things, sometimes you think, and the day after you think different. But this is the answer.
Did you want to comment on this discussion?
Yes, I should say that, of course, I am really fascinated of the work that they are doing, and the fact that I was in the lab during more than 3 months, going regularly, also allows me to see how they were work, how the protocols were, and how also the social organization of the lab, which was also very interesting for me. And
you're often the only woman, you told me.
Yes, this is true.
It's a very male
lab. And so it was really funny to have lunch with all these guys, and yeah, but it was interesting also to have their point of view, and also they asked me what I was doing in the lab, and I tried to explain, and they came to see what we were doing and why we were doing that, and of course I invite them to exhibition that they didn't came, but and no, but I think, of course, I was interested of this surface and these waves from the very beginning, and we begin with the water tank to make some waves with a non-parabolic wave maker, and he was more interested in making this parabolic wave maker. So we said, okay, we try already the other wave maker. Maybe we should move to this, so we can also find a more convergence experience between his research and my what I wanted to have at the end as an image. So I think also it was this point why we do this cusp thing, which I also think it was interesting because the cusp also as a geometrical thing, you took it from this geometrical thing, and we are going to use it maybe to the sound, with the sound as well. So I thought it was a good link between the different disciplines that I would like to work with.
Jacques, did you want to comment? Or? And I guess one of the questions that this kind of brings up is the difference between the documentary and the participative work, right? So that there's kind of a spectrum.
I think that the actual networks and the new techniques like transmedia are completely changed the documentary filmmakers' way of working. When we try to teach today different on each subject, we have to teach the different point of view which are possible to film, and it is very difficult to choose one and to forget the others. So the techniques like web documentary is actually in our laboratory and in Satis a very strong subject, because we think that in the future the old documentaries have to be done in this way, and to try to answer to your question was the difference between
the range between participatory production and documentary production.
A main difference is Javiera is alone with the scientist, and sometimes maybe you need some help from technicians, but a documentary is always a very important production with sound makers, editors, and specialists in image, and we have, and in fact, it's I think it's really different, because if a documentarist wants to do the same work as Javiera, I suppose it will be in a different budgetary circumstances. The objective, the aim is to do a film, is not to search a form and without knowing exactly what you want to do at the end, installation or movie or something all is different. But a documentary is, there is a production chain, narrative and linear production.
Okay, Hervé had a factual question. So, Patrice, can you just reply to Hervé's question?
Yeah, the question was about smatics, yes?
But explain the word for us, since I don't know what it means.
Smatics is liquid crystals that we have everywhere in our smartphone or watches and so on. So these are liquids where the molecules are quite big and are elongated. So you can orientate them using electric field, which is what it is done in our screens, but also with different things like shearing. So I want to say that because I worked also on nematics, it was another type of liquid crystals, where I put a shear on them. So you can imagine shearing is doing that, okay? So you have a liquid and you shear it. You put a stress on it, and if you do that, you can see that the molecules will have a tendency to follow the shear, so they will be oriented more and more horizontally like that. And at one point, what will happen is a kind of singular behavior too, is the molecule will flip, okay? And you have many crazy things happen. And noise. I have nice movies, but if you're interested, I can show to it.
I just want to pick up on Harold's question. So I think all of us were struck with the emotion that both of you spoke about this magic moment when both of you agreed you had something that was interesting, right? So is that a goal? Is that something that one should try and organize? Is how this magic moment happens? I mean, there you worked for days to make this equipment work, and the equipment wasn't working, and you were getting lousy waves, and then suddenly something, so clearly both of you came out of that very motivated and certainly emotional. Yes,
So that's a personal emotion, but no, but I experience and by you too. But I think this is quite difficult to organize or to it could be too good. You know, on Saturday night we have this. You see what I mean? You cannot organize these things, or you have to smoke a lot.
but in fact, I mean, listening to you talk, clearly both of you felt that you each had a part of that, right? It was not symmetrical, but it was joint. It was a joint moment, right? And that's different when the artist is in the background.
But maybe because we were, the two of us, we were looking something that it was in our field, and what we were looking for, it was this object that we found. In fact, maybe he was looking for that the wave was directly in the cusp area, was breaking, and I was looking for this moment where I see the waving break, and I could see all the textures and all this exactly moment where it became something else. So maybe when we saw it directly, we both said, this is what we're looking for. But it's also, I think it's also part of a process where we were not, at the beginning, we're not speaking at all the same language, and I don't have any science background. So we were, all the time, he was trying to explain me about science, and I was trying to explain him about what I wanted to do and how I see our collaboration. And I think that all this process bring us to this point where we can say we are looking for the same thing, we are sharing the same language, and then we will know what we wanted. Then we will see, because we know that now we understand somehow each other more than at the beginning of the collaboration. So this is something.
Yeah. Harold?
Yes, it's very interesting your dialogue just now, because at this point where you were near, you were talking about smoking the fumée moquette, okay? And you said we should smoke to get there, and you were talking about preciseness. Preciseness. You said when I reached that point, I knew I was precise in my job. You know, so you were actually very much meeting, because I feel that very, very deeply, because I have been a scientist and I'm now an artist. So those two persons are just both inside of me. And well, I think the point you said, could that be organized? Probably not. But the point is that it is small enough. I think that, to me, this small enough idea, which is both scientific idea and artistic idea, is a point. You were to a point where it was precise enough and small enough so something could join. That's my point.
Okay, so we
I have
Peter had a comment?
I have a comment and a question.
Okay, we'll do three again.
So one comment is that you cannot organize a moment, but you can organize a process. And I think both of you described precisely the process, that is having an office and being really there. And the second part was building up a common vocabulary. And then you can realize that art and science are not so split apart. And then my question is about the mediation. That is, you have that shared moment that is meaningful for both of you in their own right. How do you have now to share it to the audience? And the images are astonishing. They are extremely beautiful. They are extremely attractive. But how do you go beyond the cuteness of the pictures so that they are as meaningful, as emotional for an audience that does not have all the knowledge of both the process and the content, and again that goes beyond the it's beautiful.
But
okay, Peter.
Well, I was going to pose a similar question. It has to do with Javiera, you're working in a lab and being a part of what you would call a scientific process. Do you feel that you've learned enough about going through a process of inquiry like you experienced to where you could lead similar kinds of experiments on your own? And how would you build that into this progression of ideas that you're working on now?
Okay, third question, third comment.
Well, it's just a comment.
We have 2 days to develop a collective behavior here, so.
I've been as well artist in residence in 2 different labs, and actually what you said about accepting the artist in the lab is really important. That never happened to me, and it's something which is quite hopeful maybe to have that. As well, to answer maybe Peter, is I don't think so that the artist is there to recreate what is happening in the lab. I think he's there to get inspired by it.
Well, first of all, I should say that, okay, this picture that we show is just the first try of something we are still ongoing process. And the idea, of course, is to take them out of the lab. And for me, the picture has a meaning, as I said several times, about the transformation, about the texture, about the dynamical texture. And if I use it as a picture and not as a film, I am really interested about this exact moment where the breaking will start and it will become something else. So I can imagine to use this into a photographic installation with sound, for example, which I would like to introduce this cusp singularity that Patrice talked about to. Exactly. And so to create another meaning that goes beyond, of course, the beauty of the image. But for me, already, what I was looking for, it was already this texture, and this, for me, is a movement. And even if we don't know it's a wave, for me, I guess it vehiculates a meaning and an emotion. For me, that is interesting, first of all. And second, I also, as I say, I imagine to work with this measurement of the wave level of the Mediterranean Sea here in Marseille, which will make a complete artwork with the heartbeat of the city, the exactly moment when the wave will break, and with the sound trying to give the dynamical atmosphere that we could feel in the picture, that we can imagine in the picture, but we cannot see it directly. It's also a way for me to, as I work a lot with video, it will be a work for me to split the video in different things. The sound completely different, the pictures, and then this oscillator that shows the rhythm. It will be somehow for me a really plastic, really interesting and aesthetic way to split my video work, because I'm really stuck in, I think not stuck, but I'm
Jacques,
really in this.
Patrice, you want to respond to the 3 questions?
I don't remember the 3 questions, in fact, but what I can say is that 2 small stories. It was on Thursday night or Thursday afternoon. We worked together, and we had already several movies, and we have one movie. Wow, something you say, wow, it's there. That's the movie. Okay, so we stop there and we look the images and we look again the images. Oh no, look at this one and this one and this one. And then she said, or I said, we should maybe move the camera maybe 2 centimeters on the right. It would be better. Don't you think so? I moved the camera and the wire unplugged from the camera to the computer, and we lost our wow movie. So that's also part of the story, but we have plenty of them, but the one disappeared. And this is also kind of art. Yes, it was there, but nobody will see it again. And the second thing I want to say is on the artist creation, or where are the ideas coming from where they are coming from. So just another story. We visited a laboratory here in Lumini, which is part of my institute, and my colleagues presented to us a very big wind tunnel, which is in Lumini, where you have on 70 meters, 4 meters wide, you have a water basin, and they can blow wind on it. Okay, so you can restitute something which looks like much more of a sea. Okay, and we study that. And there we talked with the technicians and the researchers, and Javiera discovered something that I knew, but that I didn't know she could be interested in, that these probes that you can measure, it's a capacitor, you can measure the height of the water and to see the waves. Okay? So for me, it was not, it is classical things, you know, I don't pay attention to this way. But after she came back with this idea, don't you think we can use one of these probes to measure the water variation on the waves, maybe in the viewport, and you are in La Friche or in somewhere in a museum or maybe in another city, and you can reproduce in a tank the waves of the viewport, because you can transmit the signal from the probe through internet and back to the sea. And this is exactly this kind of creation that can happen. It is not organized, you know, it is not on purpose. It was because she was there and we were visiting, talking with collaborators, and she had this idea. So this is another example.
Another comment?
All documentary filmmakers dream to record a moment like this one. Perfect, you know. But I asked myself, maybe we need two things, you know. Javiera's work with you and a documentary film on your work together. This is two different things.
I want to answer to Peter, maybe. I mean, in this, I don't know if I could make alone this process that we did with the Patrice, but what I know that I can do now is this. I started this new collaboration with the acoustic lab, and I know better how maybe to, as I understand the social system of the lab, as I understand the aim of the research, maybe it's easier for me now to recreate a collaboration. But I also wanted to say and souligner that also it depends a lot about the people that you have in front, that because each one is their research are very specialized, and also they need to be willing to take risk, to go beyond their own speciality, to be able to create an art and science collaboration. And this is something that I think that I met a person, a researcher in the LMA, in the lab, acoustic lab, that I felt exactly the same, that even if it wasn't directly her own, directly her own study, she said, well, yeah, I'm interested, I know which people you can meet, and we should do together, we should bring which frame to do it, administrative frame, and so on. So I think it also depends of the willing to take the risk.
I'd just like to pick up, we haven't replied to the two sides of the question between Peter and Hervé, where Hervé said it's not the artist's purpose to use the science, but to be inspired in some way. But I think Peter was making a different statement, which is the artist can appropriate, in this case, the technology or the installation, and use it for their own purposes. So in some way, does this dispositif become part of her artistic vocabulary? So it's not just an inspiration, but also she's internalized, these are the things that I could now think about or do, like the capacitor, monitoring the viewport waves and transmitting them into the lab. So Hervé was arguing that the purpose is inspiration, and you were really arguing it's appropriation, which is slightly different. Go ahead, Peter.
No, I would argue that it's both.
So it's both. So you want to comment about this appropriation? I mean, do you feel that you're now sort of collecting technologies that you didn't feel comfortable with before, but now you could use them in the future?
I guess I already began a process where I was collecting first images from the labs, and I was using it as a raw material for me. And now, yes, there is technology, but it's more experimental situations that I don't know if I could do it alone. I don't know, but I think that yes, I could find another meaning to use them for some other artistic experience.
Annick, I think you had a comment.
I have a question for Jacques, because you were speaking a lot about documentaries. which is a genre in itself and in science communication. But if I understood well, you exhibited also installation by Javiera, and they were art installation. So I would like you to comment on the audience reception with the difference, or would you see the difference between the documentaries and the installation? And I have a second question, which is the web documentary. Do you specifically think of writing differently for those documentaries? Have you thought about cell phone screens and cell phone as this new display, which is a hot topic in some of my networks? And what is different for you from the traditional scientific documentaries? Do you see a new écriture, a new writing? And could you say your experience about that? Or share your experience?
Okay, on the first question, the difference between two types of diffusion, between documentary and installation, I have no particular comments about that. If you make a documentary, you have certain networks to show it, and included festivals on television, and it's a particular type of network, réseau de diffusion. And installation is something more. I appreciate installation because you can have in the same time, in the same place, different films, and the role of the public is different. This is a different space of diffusion, and I think that it is most interesting to have interactions between movies and films and the public, because in documentary diffusion you have just one possibility, you know, and this is we have an evolution in our work since we teach linear documentary. And today, because we pass through the question of installation, and today we are working on web documentary. And this is for us very, very, very important, because it's like if we add the advantage of the documentary and put the advantage of the installations in the same object. Because I know some web documentaries, very, very interesting, because you can have links inside the video, you can have links with sounds, we can have links between texts, images, sound, you can add something, and it's a real proposition to interaction with the public. And it seems to me that the linear documentary must be always a genre, a very important genre, but we need to look at other techniques, you know, other techniques to diffuse knowledge. And I think all subjects can be adapted to documentaries or web documentaries. But really, we start to work on the question of web documentary, actually with the Maison Méditerranéenne des Sciences de l'Homme on another subject, and I can see this is a real way for documentary, and I suppose with a big future.
Okay, so we're going to stop here.